Welcome to We Don't Have Cookies with your host, Jason Marshall.
Hey guys, thanks for downloading the show. Today I got a good one for you. It's the Halloween episode. I'll be talking about the curse of the show. Longtime listeners already know about the curse, but if you're new, I'll explain it real quick. Anytime I announce a guest for the next episode, something always happens, and either the guest can't make it, the audio gets deleted, or it doesn't get recorded at all. I can't post the show, etc. Or if I announce an idea for the show, like the International Improv show that I wanted to do a few years ago, it always seems to fall apart. Just listen to the birthday show I tried to do on the old radio show. And by go listen to it, I mean don't go listen to it. Those radio shows were horrible. But it seems like the curse has crossed over into other shows that are associated with the podcast, like Comedy A Go-Go. So joining me right now is the host of Comedy A Go-Go, Dave Nelson.
Thank you. I don't know if I'll be able to predict if it'll happen again to your show or my show, but I imagine it will happen. It's Murphy's Law, Jason.
That has to be it, right?
I think about it in terms of comedy as like particularly if I want to do a submission to something or try to get to a booker. I'm like, oh, this show, always good, always a good crowd. And those times that I go, I get my recorder set up. It's like nobody shows up, or the audience is a stick in the mud, or maybe I'm off on that day. And then the times that I'm like, I don't need to record, like do video recording, it's like one of my best shows of the month. So, I mean, it's just damned if you do and damned if you don't. I think it's bound to happen to everybody.
So what happened when the curse actually crossed over? You mentioned that on your podcast.
I was talking to a comedian in Tallahassee, and we've been like, oh, we finally got it all to happen. When I went to record, I thought I have a Zoom HN4, and I had mentioned, I'm like, yeah, an acquaintance or a friend of mine has a podcast and been having so much problems with it, and I haven't had a problem. Jesus, I probably think I had the most problems when I started out because I was using equipment, borrowed equipment, and I wasn't 100% familiar with it, or the equipment was faulty, and it had issues because it had been used and abused by students and whatnot. Or I was doing an interview over a Skype and I just didn't record it correctly, or the computer, I don't know, a million things. But I had been on a good track record of, maybe 4 years without anything really getting lost or destroyed. And then I think I got cocky because I'm like, that hasn't happened to me in a while. And I wasn't like trying to like be like, Jason, he doesn't know what he's doing. But it's just like, it doesn't happen. And I was exactly telling the guy I was talking to was Jason, and I was like, man, this hasn't happened to me in a while. And then when I got to put it together, the show, and I messaged him, I go, you know how like I was talking about how like I hadn't messed up in a while? I go, guess what? And he's like, you lost. And he's like, I'm fine with it. He wanted to redo it, so it worked out. And I'm when I go back and redo it. But I think it's that hubris. If it hasn't happened to you in a while, you know, if it's out of sight, out of mind situation. So I'm a little more sensitive to that.
Was that the only time that something like that has happened to you since you've been associated with the show?
No, I had an interview. I had to redo one with Brian Callahan because I emceed for him one week, and we did it met in his hotel room and did it, and then something happened. So he was kind enough to do it over like a phone line type situation. It's happened at least a dozen times.
Wow.
Where the audio is gone, kapow, but I think when I first started out, I would hoard interviews, so it didn't slow me down. I just had to beg and plead people. And more times than not, people were real cool about it and understood, maybe a little agitated.
I think that's part of my problem is I want to make sure that the show is as fresh as possible. So I try to get people in within a day or two of the release. And if something goes wrong within that day or two, I have a very short window to get somebody else and to edit it and make it sound good and put it out.
Yeah, I've always tried to not. I mean, some of it will probably sound dated just because when you start out something, you don't know what you're doing. You know enough to be dangerous is the phrase I like to use. And I try not to put things that would date it. So, this happened in 2012 or 2013. So try not to use current events so much. Just on the fact of like when I started out, I was always paranoid because it was much more interview based. And because the last 2 years, it's been much more, I have guests on it occasionally, but it's much more me driven. It's much more about my personality and when I do stand up. But I would just bank interviews and I would have at least month of interviews. I was closer to a comedy club where I had access to back in that time. So, and podcasts were still novel. And so comedians weren't like everybody and their mom didn't have one back, like in 2010, 2011. So it's like, what's this? Is this an internet, so they're more easy to get guests back then. I could think of the Stand-Up Chronicles and mine were probably in the green room, one of the few kind of independent, small name people doing it. I think, Bill Mosh, who'd been doing his since probably like 2007, 2006. I think there's a certain point where you've asked all the questions and there's only so many touring headline comics coming around. It's hard not to ask the same question. So I kind of went to that, like I wanted to go on a journey of what I'm doing with stand-up comedy. And if you're the guest and you're the only person that needs to be relied on, I haven't had so many problems. I think that's probably a big reason why I haven't had many kind of like curse of the shows.
Dave will be on another episode next month, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, Dave, how can people hear more from you?
I am on Twitter at hey_snowflake, where I do a daily hashtag fake advice for new comics. I also started doing bad life coach advice too recently. And Facebook, just look for Comedy A Go-Go, where I post a sundry of stuff dealing with comedy on there. And I'm on Instagram at Just a Professor, and just use your favorite search engine and look for Comedy A Go-Go, and that will pop up on the first 2 pages.
All right. Thanks, Dave, for being on the show. I love Comedy A Go-Go. Keep up the great work. I'm going to take a break and play a song by Epic Rap Battles of History. And when I come back, I will be joined by a comedian who has been on The Late Show with David Letterman, as well as Ghosthunters, who will be giving me a tarot card reading. Her name is Karen Rontowski.
What across the world? Stephen King, Forsyth, Edgar, Allan,
Once upon a midnight dreary, as I spit this weak and weary, I will choke this joker with a trochee till his cheeks are teary. But y'all don't hear me, all should fear me. I'll forever be better, you'll never be near me. Your books are as eerie as Beverly Cleary. You're a full Bram Stoker, so scram, the show's over. Your flow so, pose poems, poser. I wrote them locked in a cave, while I sobbed in a rage. The telltale heartbeat soft in its grave. Well, this jerk just beats off on a page.
You wanna talk shop? You got that fun. Go back to Hot Topic and shop for a time. There's a melancholy alcoholic laughing stock in the King's Head. Now watch the castle rise. Pouty little poet with an opiate affliction. I'm a workaholic with affection, addiction. Making dedicated readers shivery and jittery. Feel that rage and misery. You better start running, man. You're in deep poo-po. I'm a mad dog. Thanks, shiny. Cujo. Tommy knock you down till you can't stand up. You're as soft as Poe, the Kung Fu Panda. Racks on racks, cause I pen fat stacks of frightening writing. Have you seen the pile? I can even take a break from my routine style. Crank out a Shawshank or a Green Mile. Mask of the Red Death. Lily blood curdling. Hitting the pendulum. Not even unnerving. Irving on your first cousin when she's 13 years old. Now that's disturbing.
Even you pretend to do it, I've been really living through it. Misery and poverty and family woes. I see through you like pantyhose. Do a Chappelle and Simpson cameos. Even if you're gripping on a weapon, then you better get a step in if you're messing with the whore lord. In a minute, maybe I'ma hit him, cut him into itty bitty bits, and I'ma stick him in the floorboard.
Speaking of bored, you're the worst. Dropped out of school, but you can't drop a bird. I could've spent that time better. In 8 bars, I can write a whole bestseller. I'm so prolific, this sickly goblin won't be bothering me. I'm on a covering spree, and I'll be smacking you with any of the big thick books in my big dick bibliography. See, I'm the author with the blood and gore lore galore that'll horrify a reader to the core. Fame, money, talent, success, you'll always have less. Nevermore. Whole war, whole star, you decide. Epic.
All right, we're back, and joining me right now is one of the most interesting guests I've probably ever had on the show. I'm very excited to bring her in because I've been wanting to have her on the show for, I don't know, a year or so now. I follow her on Twitter, I follow her on Periscope, and I'm subscribed to her podcast, Karen and Kira Can Read, and all of those things I'm doing, you should be doing too. It's comedian Karen Rontowski. How you doing?
Great. Thank you for having me. That's a high pressure intro. Unless your other guests have been terrible, then it's fine. Yes. And Paranormal Karen, I'm learning to plug things. Paranormal Karen, the YouTube series, because that's the TV show I watch that I deserve.
I'm so glad that you were able to come on. I'm sorry, listeners, you don't know this side, but it was kind of a headache for her to do the show. So thank you for putting up with everything. Coming in.
It was no problem at all. No, it's perfect. There's always something new that I have to, I believe it was Skype that we had to add to my phone. And now I know. Now I know. And Microsoft is going to listen to me, can listen to all my conversations because I have a tendency to get a little paranoid. But that's just since the other day when I thought the aliens had implanted a tracking device in me. But it was only a loose Frito in my underwear. So it's okay so far. But a lot going on already, right?
Oh, yeah. That's why I was so excited to have you in here. But you're not just a regular comedian. You do psychic stand-up, too, which is pretty cool. You want to let everybody know how that works?
Sure, I do. So I was on the road for about 24 years, and I have the most exciting life. But I was like, I got to be home more. This is too much. I was doing about 32 weeks a year on the road.
Wow.
And I've been a ghost hunter. I've been ghost hunting all my life, or I guess all my adult life, I should say, because there's no 5-year-old ghost hunters. But not willingly.
Maybe there should be.
There should be. I know. That'd be interesting. And I always read tarot cards, and I sort of started to merge the two. And I read tarot from the stage, and that led to my show called Psychic Stand-Up, where comics would do comedy, and then I'd read for them. And then, of course, I had my buddy Kira Sultanovich on, and then she had me on her podcast. And it turns out she's got the psychic thing happening. So that led to our other podcast. So, yes, we're doing readings and making people laugh at the same time. But why not? It doesn't have to be spooky, right?
That's right. And I'm glad you brought that up because that was the next thing I wanted to talk about was your podcast with her. And man, it's so much fun to listen to. I really like it when you have somebody back and they're like, man, once I finished talking to you, X, Y, and Z happened. And it was along the timeline.
Oh, good to hear, because you know what? We were thinking about that. We have to have follow-up shows. It's getting even more interesting. The more we do it, the more we learn. And it's called Karen and Kira Can Read. And when sometimes we'll have a comic on, we're like, oh, this person is high energy and this is going to just be laughs and da-da-da. And they'll come in and it's the exact opposite. And like Kira and I have to work really hard. And then sometimes it'll get into something sad and it'll take like a turn, you know what I mean? Like sometimes it gets kind of intense, and then sometimes it's just never even what we expect, which is what makes it kind of interesting and off the wall a little bit, Have
you ever done a reading that surprised you where you didn't really want to tell the person what you saw in the cards because it was just a little too much?
Yeah, what I've learned though is that happens to me a lot when people ask about their marriage. And a lot of my clients, because I read during the day, that was the business I opened up so I could stay home. And now they're pretty compatible. But 90% of my readings are over the phone. And I like that actually better than in person because I can't see their reaction. And so there's no, you know what I mean, misinterpretation, or they can't say, oh, you saw it, When someone asked me about their marriage, I had to learn to just do what the cards say. And you just have to go with your gut and what they're telling you, because sometimes people will be like, hey, so I just been married 6 months. What's my marriage look like? And you're like, oh, no. And then you kind of say, well, there's a lot of work to be done. And then you almost hear them go, I know. Or you know what I mean? Like but very rarely is it off. I do remember one girl I read for, she had a new boyfriend and everything was perfect. And I was like, well, something's going to happen here. And it actually disappointed her. And she sent me the email later and said, that really disappointed me. And I said, I'm an old softie. I was like, do you want a new reading for free? Or, I felt bad. And sure enough, 6 months later, it all happened exactly what you said. And
oh, wow.
So I gave her an extra 15 minutes, and we kind of went into some things. And by the end of it, she had complete clarity and was ready. Her and this guy actually found a way to get back on track. But sometimes we have to come apart to come back together. I remember the last guy I was seeing, I did my own cards on it, and it was like, you're walking away from him. And I was like, no way, not happening. You guys are wrong. And then sure enough, a month later, I was like, what? And I was gone.
I was going to ask if you ever use the cards to help you, like if there's a new neighbor moves in and you're just like, man, I wonder what they're like, but I don't really want to talk to them. Or if you ever do things like that.
I've never had that, but yeah, I do. Some people won't read their own cards, but I think if you're really open and don't keep doing layouts till it turns out to be what you want. And if you're really ready to hear the answer, here's a really weird story. So there's a card called the Tower card, which is for people that don't know tarot. It's literally a building being struck by lightning and people flying out of the building. And it's a very destructive card. And it was my first time ever on Letterman. And that card came up for my show.
Ooh.
And I was like, oh, I'm not looking anymore. They fly me to New York. I get to New York. I get a call from the people at Letterman, and they say, we're so sorry. We're going to fly you back. We had to bump you. And I was like, oh, maybe that was it. Then the next day, the booker called me and goes, thank God you weren't here. We had the worst crowd in the history of the show. And the guy that you got bumped for just died. And I was like, oh. So then you have to remember the meaning of that card, which is getting things on track. In other words, if something's going wrong, it's the universe coming in. It's when something bad happens that we think it's bad, but we don't realize, oh, that was really good. And then I was like, I didn't read till after I was on. I was like, that's enough.
Yeah, I've had something like that happen to me recently where I was very upset with somebody. It turned out that the reason I was upset with them and them not coming through for me was a good thing, because somebody else came in and everything was so much better, and it was nice. I think
right. That's the universal attitude we got to have, that it's all happening for a reason.
Yeah, and looking back, I was actually glad that it did happen, not just because I got a better deal somewhere else, but because it did ingrain that lesson that you might be mad right now, but things are going to work out. Just kind of relax.
Yeah. Somebody, last night, I was flying home last night and I was having a heart attack on the plane, something different, about my dog was with me. And, this is I don't know why I even started this story. It's such a strange story. My dog is taking heart pills. So they have diuretics and heart pills. So he has to pee all the time. And and usually I can get him off the plane and get back on when it's stuck. I have the TSA get up, let him go to the bathroom. And I couldn't. It was going to be like 13 hours and I was losing my mind.
Ooh.
And my friend sent me a text, and it was of a guy meditating, and it said, just relax. Nothing is under control. And I thought, that's exactly right. That we might as well let it happen. What is it?
I got a question for you about your podcast. This happened, it was a few episodes ago. You were talking to somebody about Ouija boards, and you said that they were very bad and people shouldn't use them. Because you could pull something through that you don't want to. Later in that show, you were talking to them about mediums that can talk to people on the other side. I don't really know a lot about that kind of stuff. This was one of those times where it was like, man, I wish they had a phone number I could call in and ask questions. Because I was wondering why it would be bad to use a Ouija board to talk to somebody, but to go through a medium is okay.
Excellent question. So there's I'll differentiate the two things that I do, like a psychic and a tarot reader, which I do tarot. And I guess I'm a psychic. I don't know. Yeah, they're all the same category. We are looking into the future and reading cards. Mediums talk to dead people. Okay. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they very rarely overlap. Sometimes I can get a little through the cards, but they're really two different skills. What people don't realize is on the other side, as we'll say, people always think, well, there's ghosts and there's demons. And there is so much between there. There's all kinds of I guess I could say entities between there, whether you want to talk about aliens or attachments or other beings. So a medium should know who they're talking to. They should be able to identify the person. They should know if it's human. When you start with a Ouija board, it's sort of opening a vortex. And some people use Ouija boards and they don't have any trouble and they swear by them. And probably 90% of the audience has had an experience with a Ouija board that went fine. But it's actually called a speaking board. That's how they were first used. And they send out a very low vibration. And they attract a lot of things. And so you could be on a Ouija board thinking you're talking to a little girl. And it's actually not a little girl. It's actually something much darker and maybe more powerful. The good part is these things cannot access or come through unless they have your permission. But they might be like, oh, I'm a little girl and I died young and I used to live here and I just want to look around once. Can I come through? And if someone says yes, you just said yes to you don't know what. And people end up with things talking to them, paranormal stuff going crazy in the room. If you listen to almost anything by Ed and Louise Warren, so many things have started with a Ouija board. So a Ouija board is sort of like conjuring something to speak with you. Whereas tarot and psychic and medium, if the medium was going to conjure something rotten, it would go with her, not you. So that's why you kind of have to have someone that knows what they're doing. But anytime you're sort of, even when we ghost hunt or we do investigations, if we're doing it in someone's home, we try not to have the people in the home there, because that is almost like sending out an invitation saying, yeah, come on in. We want you to haunt us all the time. You know, if it's someone like I'm in there, they don't recognize me. They will not attach. They will not look for me at a future time. Or if they do, I won't be there. Mm-hmm. But Ouija boards, if you know how to do a Ouija board, like even the symbols in the side, sometimes the symbols in the side, if they come up, that is a spirit asking for mediumship. So it may come through a person that's not a medium or doesn't know what they're doing. Now you really got a situation, okay? If you do use a Ouija board, you have to make sure you know the intent of everyone you're using it with. Everybody has to be on the positive side and ready for the light. But I think people should really avoid Ouija boards just in general, because if you don't know what you're doing, like I said, you could end up with something pretty horrible in your house.
That was a really good answer.
Did it make sense?
Yeah, I want to thank you for that, because that has been on my mind ever since I heard that podcast.
Sometimes I hear myself talking and I think, my words are never as fast as my thoughts. Mm-hmm. And I always think, did you just jump over a big part there? But I guess that was good.
You said that you do tarot readings, so you don't really access that side of things very often, but sometimes they overlap. I was wondering if you could do a tarot reading about some things that have been happening around my house lately. I don't want to describe them too much because I don't want listeners to think that I'm just leading you into what I want to hear.
Okay.
But afterwards, I'll be more than happy to tell you what's going on, because it was a very interesting weekend.
Okay. And just so I know so I know what I'm reading, mm-hmm. Was this are you talking about a paranormal situation?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see. I've never read anything like that. Let me take a shot at it and see what's going on. When you do tarot, the most important thing is asking the question correctly. Okay? Mm-hmm. And I will tell you the cards I have up and how I interpret them. Okay?
Okay.
For anybody, there's always a tarot nerd that's sort of listening. So I phrased this question, what is going on in his house? And what I have is the Fool, the Three of Swords, which is really like a broken heart with swords through it, and Strength, which is a female and an animal, and then the Four of Wands. And that I sort of split apart. So basically, that looks pretty simple to me. The broken heart is what's really speaking more to me about the vibe and sort of the feeling in the house. And I'm going to leave that there for 1 second, because it's also a card of, it's very strange. Okay. Something with that. Well, I'm going to jump to the second half and then tell you why.
Okay.
Okay, so the second half goes to the Ace of Pentacles, the Devil card, and the Seven of Cups. Okay, now the Devil card is not usually about a devil. Okay, it's usually about what we do to ourselves. But when I match it with the Seven of Cups, this is something very much about delusion, is how I'm going to put it. Things not being seen as they should. And the Ace of Pentacles tells me that it's something earthly. So I would say that something was going on in your house that's not supposed to be there. Now, don't get scared. That doesn't mean that there's something walking around or influencing you. But what I do want to say, it's very interesting, between the Fool and the Strength card with your wife falls that broken heart, as though there was misinformation or something that happened that is delusion. I'm going to go again to delusion, illusion, that something happened there of a miscommunication of a different sort. It does show me this all ended up okay. And there's a healing card to it. Here's how I want to say, was there something that happened, that miscommunication between you and your wife?
Yeah, last night.
Okay. Is that what you're talking about, or do I have a different situation here?
No, I think you got a different situation.
I may need more information.
Okay. What the situation was, I was sitting, well, you know what? Maybe you are right. Now that I think I started the story off, and now it kind of makes sense how you would see that. I was sitting at my desk. I was working on last Monday's episode, and I could smell this overwhelming smell of perfume. And I have a young daughter. I just thought, oh my God, she took another bath in perfume. So I get up to go tell her, hey, I think you put on way too much perfume. You need to go wash some of that off, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I get up and I walk into the living room where my wife is, and she's in there with my daughter. When I walk into their room, I don't smell that anymore. And I said, did one of you guys spray something? It's really loud. And my wife said no. And I said, well, come in here real quick. She came in and she could smell it. It was like a very, like an older woman's perfume. Then we went into my wife's living room again, and the scent just kind of followed us in there. Now, what happened is the house that I live in used to belong to my mom. I bought it before she passed away. While she was, this sounds so weird. I know it's a comedy show, but while she was laying on her deathbed, one of the things that I told her right before she died was, you can always live forever at my house, meaning her house. And this wasn't the first time something like this has happened, but we would go upstairs or something. It would be upstairs. And then I went to pet my cat. And when I pet my cat, I picked it up and it smelled just like the perfume. Then today, my wife left for work and she had the door shut to her living room all day. I opened it up to put some of my kids' stuff in there, and that perfume scent just hit me like a ton of bricks. And that actually used to be my mom's bedroom.
You know what? And that's a very, very simple answer. I don't even think I got that right on the tarot. I'll call on that. But I don't have, except the only thing now, if I put it together backwards. No, I don't. I think it's a different thing. I think I either didn't ask the question right or something. But here is the thing. That is your mom. That's a medium. That's sort of a medium question. Not only is that probably your mom, but that's her letting you know that she's around. That's a very common thing with people that have passed on, or a lot of times smoke. If somebody smoked a pipe, you will smell a pipe, or it'll be like somebody just smoked and went through your house, all that stuff. So that's a pretty basic paranormal thing there. If I look backwards, it's very interesting because is something going on in your house right now, in particular, or in your life right now, that she would be around? Is it a date or a time or something happening there, as something that would be that you'd have her around more than usual?
I'm trying to think. She always was a big fan of Christmas, but we're a couple months out from that.
Right.
And the day she died, that was August 8th. So we're kind of right in between those two dates.
Well, it also could just be she's around more. And here is the other thing. The veil between the worlds is getting much thinner. So that place where people that used to see ghosts when they were little and then didn't anymore are now seeing them again. because the veil between our world and their world is getting much thinner. So your mom may have been around, but now it really seems like she's around. Is that her perfume, though? Because I keep wanting to say it's someone else, that it's not your mom.
To be honest, I couldn't put my finger on it. This sounds weird to say, but you know how it seems like each generation has their own scent of perfume or cologne. And
right.
It's definitely from that era, I guess is the only way I could put it. But I couldn't say, yeah, that definitely smells like my mom. It's just, that's clearly an older woman's perfume is all I can say. But there was, I'm sorry.
Yeah, an older woman that lived there before.
I couldn't really say.
I just have a gut. My gut keeps telling me that it's someone different. That doesn't mean it's anyone dangerous. It could just be someone that this was their house and they're just still making a visit to see what's going on.
Because this house was built in the 1800s. So.
Oh, yeah, you got a haunted house. Yeah, but yeah, that's very common. The stuff you got there is very common. Nothing dangerous at all either. Just as a rule of thumb for people that have, do probably have haunted houses and stuff like that. Usually, if they move things, anything that's like human spirits, they smell sometimes. Very rarely do they appear. A full body apparition is just not. That takes a lot of energy on their part, and most of them don't have it. Or if objects are moving that weigh less than 2 pounds, that's usually a human spirit and nothing you really have to worry about unless people start getting very depressed or moods start changing. Then you might have something that's kind of stealing your energy or attaching to you or stuff like that. But no, that sounds like somebody that's just used to be her house wandering around.
So one of the things that has plagued the show, I call it the curse of the show. It seems like since the beginning, there has always been something that would go wrong. I recorded the first episode, and I think it took 2 or 3 weeks before I was actually able to even publish it. I recorded the second episode, and my computer broke, and it took about 2 weeks for that to happen. Things finally started getting on track, but if I ever promote somebody's coming on, 9 times out of 10, they have to cancel for some reason. All kinds of things like that. It feels like the show is cursed. I actually had a preacher come in and he blessed the show. And
oh, funny. Oh, that's great.
And it happened after that too. So I was wondering if you could look and see if there's anything about the show. I will
look on that. Because, that's funny. I'm not too big on curses, okay? Mm-hmm. There's very, very few people that really know what they're doing when they curse someone. And usually I think that's the energy. Like if I tell you I put a curse on you and you believe me, then it's a problem. If you're like, I don't believe in curses, it's usually not. But here's the reading I want to do. I'm going to ask about you and the show because I think that's something subconscious going on.
Okay. I think my monthly co-host, Benny Mack, put it best when he said, Jason, I think you're just a unfortunate individual.
No, and don't let anyone tell you that. Don't even use those words. Here's interesting. Okay. So, first of all, you're over the hump on those things happening. So we're going to change your words. Awesome. All right. And how many episodes have you done?
I think this one will be 165.
Wow. Okay. So probably if you weighed all the episodes that went right, mm-hmm. you might find that to be the way you're looking at it. Okay. But here is the thing also is it's showing me that there's actually a place coming with your podcast that feels, it's going to have more happiness to it. And here's the word I want to use, more risk. Okay. Because I think some of these things happening might have been inside you, first of all, weren't exactly sure what you wanted to expect from it. Okay. And I know that sounds crazy because we all want it to go to number one and make it so we can do our stand-up where we want and, you know, all these things that we want. But sometimes we're not really ready for that. And the card that came up for you is the entertainer card, okay? Were you ready to become an entertainer and embrace that? Now, we know, and I love this card of entertainment because sometimes we're just comics and we do stand-up and then we kind of add something to it. Mm-hmm. And we sort of become more broader. But it was kind of like saying, the only card that shows up here negative is the self-sabotage card, okay? And this can be so deep inside that we don't even realize we're doing this ourselves, okay? Or we're sending out that vibe. A lot of people, they affect their own computers. If I get mad around my computer, I've broken computers because of how angry I was. Okay. Just the energy, not punching the computer. I have a friend that does that same thing. And even Kira, the other day, our sound stuff didn't work. And she was like, oh, I might have popped it. Sometimes that happens, you know, just because you can do that with your energy. So the same thing with your energy, where you may have actually been kind of blocking this or being too careful is the phrase I want to use, because I keep wanting to use risk on the other side. Or you may have thought, well, you know, I'm never going to be Mark Maron or so-and-so, or, you know what I mean? I'm just this little guy here doing this.
That was almost a word for word conversation I had off mic with a former guest last week.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, you know what? You don't have to be him. You're doing great as you are. Your podcast may be, especially since you had me on, as good as his. Just kidding. But it's like there's these things that we don't allow ourselves and these barriers that we put up. If you ever met Mark Maron, you'd be like, oh my God, I could talk to him forever. He's just like me. You know what I mean? But there's sort of a barrier there. And that's what's coming down. And there's a healing going on, and you're getting used to this, which looks really good. And I also want to say, don't think of this as the beginning, okay, or the student phase, because you really have learned a lot of things, and you are ready to take these risks and go out and do other things. In fact, I keep wanting to say the way to beat this self-sabotage is not to limit yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like, go after, you know, send Mark Maron an email. He may never get it, but you know what? Go out on the limb. Go talk to whoever you want. Go be like, hey, there's a professor that goes to Dartmouth that whatever, give him a call, you know, send an email. Start taking risks with it, because you're going to find that your reach, the higher you reach, the higher you'll go. And you deserve that. And sometimes that's a hard thing for people to say, but you deserve that.
That's great to hear. You're 100% right. There has been a lot of times on the show where I was kind of just reeling back and keeping things a little
safe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the best way to put it.
Yeah. And it's okay to get out of the box. And there are no levels. You are not a beginner. You know what you're doing. You know, like I said, watch that self-sabotage. There's no reason you can't have a #1 podcast in the country. There's no reason, you know, it's just keep doing it. Put your head down, put your heart in it. In fact, it was funny. I was having a conversation with one of my friends that's a comic, and somebody had, here in LA, she had done her show, and somebody had said, oh, those are white girl problems or something like that. And she kind of felt bad or limited, or it was something, I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but she was feeling like maybe she's not going to her depth in her act. And it's like, you know, as long as you're being authentic and taking a risk, that will appeal to people. You know, if you're a very deep person, you go on that deep podcast. If you're not, being a shallow person on that podcast is going to work. But if it's the authentic you will attract what's out there. So, you know, I was flattered that you asked me on your podcast. I was like, oh, this would be great. And so think of it that way. Like, I'm not doing you a favor. We're friends. We do this.
Yeah. And that's awesome to hear, because I was, oh, darn, I lost my train of thought.
It's that ghost old lady walking through your place, taking your thoughts.
Oh, well, sorry about that. Hey, maybe that's the next thing we should do is, am I ever going to get enough sleep? Because I am so sleep deprived these days.
Are you? I'm usually not, just today. When I read tarot cards, half the time I don't remember what I said because it's heavy In fact, I'm going to be teaching tarot on Patreon, and I'm hopefully going to be starting my own podcast. And some of the psychic exercises that people can do, I want to start including, because when I do tarot, it is such a focus and it's such a work for your mind where you have to. Some of the memory exercises that you do in tarot are so that you can go back and grasp the images that you're getting right away. I have an image of your desk right away or where you're sitting right away. And it may not be exact. Mm-hmm. So when I started reading tarot, oh my God, do I sleep at night? And I don't even realize it's one of the greatest gifts about doing this job. I sleep like the dead. But today's the one day you caught me where I have no sleep either. Let me see if I can see what your sleep issue is.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I will be dead tired all day. I can barely think I'm so tired. And once it gets around 11 o'clock, I start perking up. A million ideas come into my head. I want to be at my computer to write them all down. Next thing I know, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I try to lay down to go to sleep. And when it's time to wake up, I can barely get out of bed. I'm so tired. And it's a Groundhog Day effect. It just happens every day.
Oh, that's very funny. Well, here's the thing. This is something that can help you, but I do think, well, here's two things real quick. I sell hemp oil. Hemp oil is so good for so many things. Get it at your health food store. If anybody wants to contact me, I sell a rather high-end, expensive, but I always tell people, if you don't get it from me, get it somewhere and give it a try. It's amazing. Meditation would help you out so much. Okay. Mm-hmm. But I do see, it keeps showing me that this is a problem that's going to come and go. Even if you tackle it, it's going to come and go until you change a particular pattern or your biology changes. And it will as you get older, that it just does. I used to be like that all the time, but now I could be in bed at 10 every night.
That sounds
of course, it
great.
doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. But like I said, any type of meditation or learning to calm your mind works like exponentially through your day. Your imagination, it's very interesting because it's showing me your imagination and how it works very quickly. So it's almost like once you tune that in, you can't stop it. Yeah. Okay. And this is really a gift. Imagination, oddly enough, is not a thing. It's a place like in another dimension. So you tap into this other dimension where I believe we have access to everything. And you kind of get stuck there, which is really interesting. There's an app on my phone and it's called Calm, CALM. And it's literally, some of it is just like this ball that expands to breathe in and decreases to exhale. If you can do any sort of that sort of calming yourself. Also, I keep wanting to say to you, those ideas will be there in the morning, or those ideas will be there. It doesn't have to be that hour. You won't lose them. Mm-hmm. So that would, I think, would help out some. I want to say, I feel like you have a very strong connection spiritually, or that you have a belief system. I want to say the stronger that gets, and whatever you want to, if you're Catholic, anybody out there, or if you're, I always find it amazing that people think the tarot cards are of the dark side, because nothing has ever made me feel more connected to the universe and to God than reading the cards. And when I'm done with a reading, sometimes I almost feel high sometimes about like I've hit that higher vibration that just is that euphoric place. It's also the place where hippies like me lose our keys and forget everything. And like, I was never like that. I am such a hippie now. It's ridiculous, because when you hit that higher vibration, that's really where you're trying to connect, and it helps with everything. And it sort of just helps give you that faith that, yeah, it's going to be fine. Why not go to sleep? Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's already an opening there that you could lean on more. That's how I want to say it.
And it's funny that you bring that up, because it is almost like this childlike feeling. I feel like if I go to bed before 2 or 3, I'm missing out on something and I need to at least stay up till then to get everything I need in, you know?
Right. Yeah. And it'll be there tomorrow. Every once in a while, I think, I should just move out into the wilderness, but I can't live in a city that's not 24 hours. And I don't go out 24 hours. I'm never out, but I can't live somewhere where I couldn't get up at 4 a.m. and go find a milkshake. That would make me crazy. You know?
I can understand that. Milkshakes are delicious.
Yes. And I don't even eat dairy. I'm vegan, but I need to know that there's people out and about and that there's that energy moving around. So that might be part of it too, but just remembering that, and also as a comic, you know, all of our stuff is night. And comedians never feel like they're done. We're never done. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like we always feel, I got to do more. I got to do more. Yeah.
I've always been a night owl. I mean, my entire life, it's just how I've been. So I think there's something to that there too.
Yeah. And the other thing, and this is the last thing, I know I'm off on a trail now.
Oh, you're fine.
Be okay with it if it happens. Because once we start with, oh my God, I got to fall asleep. Don't look at the clock, number one. Just turn the clock around and don't look at it. Just be like, hey, if this is how it is, I'll read a book or I'll watch something on Netflix or something like that. Because once you start with, oh my God, I got to sleep, that's the most stressful thing that will keep you awake forever.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I do that quite often too. I'm always looking at the clock thinking, why am I not asleep yet?
Yeah. And that's the worst feeling. But just be like, hey, my body's got to do what it's got to do. Maybe I'll listen to this incredible podcast while I'm doing it. But definitely find something that brings you joy, or, you know what I mean? Like a book or a podcast, and put in your earphones so you don't wake up your wife or something. But yeah, try that. Go to your health food store, try some hemp oil or something like that. Ask them for something holistic, because I really think it could help. But calming that mind with meditation really will be a start also.
Do you mind if I ask you one more question?
No,
Okay.
No, I'm done. No, I'm just kidding. Sure, have at it.
I just started doing audio engineering, and I'm wondering if that's going to pay off.
Let's take a look. First of all,
I kind of feel
I
guilty
love it.
asking you that, though. That seems like a very selfish question. I kind of feel like a jerk now.
No, not at all. That's what I know. People always get odd because once I pull up the tarot cards, then it's about you, and you're more comfortable asking about others. But this is exactly what you need. You need to get selfish. You know, selfish is sometimes a bad word. Sometimes it's a good word. This is your thing, man. This is what you're going to do. This is where you find out how you are. So that's why we're reading you. First of all, I love that you did it, because that was just another way of sending the universe the message. I'm really serious about this. I'm not a starter. I'm doing this.
Awesome.
Okay.
It was funny that you brought up talking to people that I feel like are out of my reach, because I was just having a conversation with somebody the other day saying how much easier, for whatever reason, it is for me to deal with people who are way above my status.
Okay. So the status part is only in your mind. Okay. People really aren't above your reach. It really shows this podcast for you with the layout I did is much bigger than you're thinking in what it is doing for you. And I see you going back and forth on this again, buying the equipment or I'm not worth it. Whatever you have to do to get over that, you're going to come to a place where you're going to get it, where no, it was worth it. This is you finding out about you more so than you know. Okay, that you may be entertaining and people come out with guests, but people will listen to what the guests say and hopefully they'll learn something. But this is about you learning to be, again, this card is an entertainer. You are an entertainer. You are embracing other skills. Go listen to some horrible podcasts and see how good you are. I'm not kidding. Go listen to some people that have just microphones set up and they're talking to their dog. You really have a great voice. You know what you're doing here. This podcast is a healing thing for you. And whenever you let yourself shine, you sort of take it back a little bit. Okay, you deserve these good things. So this is part of your growth back and forth, and let it grow. You can take this on as a beginner's mind, but you're not a beginner. Beginner's mind, very different, very hard to come by, and very much what it's showing me for your podcast, that you can come on here and ask me the questions, show people the way, show people how tarot works. You have the beginner's mind, which is how you teach people other things. Never lose that. Also, it just is showing me this, the card is literally disillusion of how hard you are on yourself. Okay? That's not going to win anything, but all this stuff that you're doing is going to move you to a place where this is going to apex. Okay? And you're literally going to sit down and you're going to start to get clarity on what I'm saying and all the things that are pulling together. Well, you'll be able to step back and take a look at it. And that is going to sort of be your judgment or awakening day. And it's going to be a pinnacle of something. And it is at that time that you are to decide exactly what I said. You're worth it. You take up this space on the planet. You deserve to be here. And people are happy to talk to you. So yes, that is going to absolutely, all the stuff you bought is worth it. You're not going to let yourself believe that for a while, though.
Okay. I can see that too, because it probably will take a bit for that to set in, because as much as I love what I do, and it's grown a lot, we're on every single platform there is for podcasts, and getting to iHeartRadio was a big thing for me. But
so next time you have the bad thoughts or the negative thoughts, entertain them the other way. And what we send out really is what we get back. And I know I've been talking too much, but I know that book, The Secret, I kind of call myself a medium to dark light worker, because I have friends that are light workers that are all about the light and it's all good. And I'm more like, stupid Southwest was late and blah, blah, you know what I mean? So I definitely, and I go on the darker side, the ghost hunting and stuff like that. And I'm pretty good at, I always try to include something stupid I did or losing my temper, because I think sometimes people that are too light, they kind of are projecting that they're perfect. And I'm like, that's not where any of us need to go. Nobody's going to be perfect. Nobody needs to go there. I'm a screw up really bad, but I'm doing my best. I think that's a level a lot of people can meet me on. The Secret was like, hey, you just got to think that way, and then everything's going to happen. And then everybody tried to think that way and nothing happened. And then they felt like failures. Well, the idea of The Secret is a great premise. I have 51 years of programming in my body. That's not going to be unprogrammed by one book. And probably a lot of the baggage we carry is past life baggage, is other people's energy we're picking up. There's a million things. But to get started on that and just say, you know what, today I'm not going to beat myself up. Do that for one day and start to see the way other people treat you. You know what I mean? Try it on a smaller level and realize anything is possible. There's no reason you can't have an unbelievably successful podcast. There's no reason you can't have that. You're doing the work. You're putting that energy out there. Now let it come back to you and fill your heart. It'll come back when you fill your heart with that, you know, even if it's just a possibility. But I want it to be a knowing that, hey, I put out a great podcast. You guys should listen to it.
Well, thanks. I really appreciate that. I'm looking forward to that day coming soon. And unfortunately, you said it's going to be a while, but that's okay.
Well, maybe
life's a journey, right?
Right. Maybe there'll be a day where you do have cookies.
We'll celebrate, and I'll have a whole new spinoff. We got all the cookies. That's the new
there
show.
You go. Or it'll just be let yourself have some cookies. Let yourself have some cookies.
Well, Karen, I want to thank you for coming on. I've had a great time. Is there anything you want to plug before we go?
My website is Karen Rontowski. If anybody wants a reading, I do most of them over the phone. And my web series, Paranormal Karen. It's on YouTube, or you can find everything on my website. I really appreciate it. And I had a blast talking to you.
I had a really good time. And that's it for us. I want to thank everybody for downloading the show. I hope you had a good time too. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening. Tell your friends about the show and leave a review. See you next time.
come on in. We want you to haunt us all the time.